Hey guys, welcome back to the Far Better Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Clark, and boy, this is bittersweet, isn't it? This is Season 10, Episode 195 on the Scattered Abroad Network. By the time this is all said and done, we will have recorded 215 episodes of the Far Better Podcast, and then it will come to a conclusion. Look, I will have more to say about all of this in the series finale, which is weird to say as well. But for now, I just want to say and express an immense amount of gratitude for all of you that have stuck with me and stayed in regard to this podcast and all that we're doing with it. The Scattered Abroad Network is something that is very near and dear to my heart. I love and appreciate all of the men that are a part of this network, all of our staff who are pro bono. They work for free. All of the support that is given by our supporting congregations and individuals, whether it was a one-time donation or a continual donation, cannot do this network work without you. And also for the Memphis School of Preaching and being the work of the school that we're privileged to be now, that we get to come and give back to MSOP. And let me just say this. I think sometimes I do talk about it, but I don't know if it's really understood. My main job, my first and foremost responsibility is to the Memphis School of Preaching as their recruiter and digital promoter. And so I do a lot of traveling for that. And so if you're interested in knowing more about the work of MSOP, you can reach out to me at mclarke, M-C-L-A-R-K-E, mclarke at msop.org. Now, let me just tell you kind of a recap. That's what I think we're going to want to do here. Next week, I'll explain what we're going to be doing for the remainder of this season. It's going to be detailing the define and defeat process. And that's a process that is not often thought of in premillennialism, if you've not ever heard me talk about it at least. Those of you, Nathan and others, that have sat through my classes on premill before or have talked with me and seen the binder that I put together on this, you know the define and defeat process a little bit better than the average person. But we're going to do a couple of things in this episode and basically kind of try to recap where we're at, okay? And so what I want to do is first talk about just a definition and distinction kind of deal, and we'll talk about some charts that I have as well that we'll be using and utilizing. But in the first place, there is, typically speaking with premillennialism, a rapture, which is a resurrection of the saints. You're taken from the planet to live with Christ in paradise for a set amount of time. There are different brands of this rapture. Some believe that the tribulation will take place after the rapture. Others say it'll happen 3.5 years into the 7-year tribulation. And it's rare, but some do believe that it happens at the end. Well, who's raptured? Well, the living are raptured, and the righteous dead are raptured. And typically speaking, they live between 7 or 3.5 years in heaven. After this, Christ will return with his saints. There will be a battle of Armageddon. The Jews will be returned. Satan will be bound. And a kingdom will be established. Then a 1,000-year reign will begin. Christ will set up this kingdom. And after that 1,000-year reign, there will be eternity. Heaven or hell. The wicked will be raised. Judgment will take place. And there you go. That is as best of a recap as I can basically give you about premillennialism, but I do want to look through some of these charts just once more, and again, if you're interested in this material, you can reach out to us here at Memphis, and we'll see what we can do about sharing some of it. It is something that we don't often share because it's a part of the curriculum here at MSOP, and so we want to make sure the students are getting it organically during their time at Memphis. But as I'm getting down here to the charts, let me just do something here, and let's talk about, let's see, where do I want to go? Okay, here we go. Post-tribulational premillennialism says that there is tribulation, a second coming, millennium, then the last judgment. Then In dispensational premillennialism, there's a second coming for the church, 7-year tribulation, second coming with the church, millennium, eternity. Postmillennialism says there's a millennium. And then amillennialism says it's symbolic. Remember the idea of, amillennialism, the idea of there being a present church age, then there's a second coming and a rapture, heaven. There you go. Historic premillennialism says the present church age occurs, but then there's that 7-year tribulation, there's a second coming and a rapture, and then a millennial kingdom for 1,000 years, eternal state. Dispensational premill talks about a present church age, then there's the rapture of the church. There are 3.5 years taking place. Daniel's 70th week takes place during this time frame of the tribulation to the second coming, I should say. There's another 3.5-year period after the abomination of desolation, which takes place halfway through the 7 years. Jesus then comes at the end of the 7 years. There's a millennial kingdom for 1,000 years, final judgment, eternal state. That's dispensational premillennialism. And postmillennialism just essentially talks about the idea of there being the church age, tribulation, millennium, second coming, Christ, final judgment, boom. So, if I were to summarize all of this into an apple pie order as we try to bring this kind of to a somewhat close for this episode, it would be this. I know that there are a lot of individuals who may listen to this. They may read about some of the premillennial things, and they may simply say, yeah, but why do we have to cover this? What's the point? Why are we doing this? Let me tell you why. If you type into Google, and in fact, let's just do this. I think we might have done this in Season 9, but in the off chance that we didn't, let's do it this way. Signs of the times. If I type that in, you have different viewpoints and even a magazine that you can do. But here you go. Doesn't take long to find. The Bible gives us clear signs of what to expect in the last days. 4 signs of the end times predicted in the Bible. Second coming signs of the times, part 2 with Bruce Porter. These are things and people who are going through, and even BibleInfo.com has signs of the times with an article that you can read that are trying to get you to think in premillennial terms. These are not unknown doctrines. They may be unknown to us, but that doesn't mean that they're unknown to the world. And I look at it somewhat similarly to what Paul wrote when he says, I would not have known sin had the law not said thou shalt not covet. And you may not have known premillennialism until we started talking about it. You may not have understood it. Maybe at the end of this, you're still kind of scratching your head. And I find myself, as much as I enjoy diving into this subject and studying and looking at it, I still think about certain things and go, man, I don't know. I'm amazed that this is a viewpoint, and I'm struggling to see how this could be thought about as a way to believe about the end of time. Maybe that's where you'll fall too. What I can tell you, though, is this. There are people in your community. There are people possibly where you work, where you live, maybe even people that you interact with in other social settings that believe in premillennialism. Would it not then behoove us to know what these subjects are, know what they teach, know how to combat them, and be able to fight against the subject matter of premill? I would say yes, and I'll say it this way. In 2 Timothy 4 and verse 2, Paul, writing to Timothy, kind of his final instructions before he were to pass on to the next life in eternity, wrote to Timothy that he had to reprove, rebuke, exhort. We don't really use the word reprove much today like we did back then, especially in the old King James versions that have the word reprove. It's not a bad word in and of itself. It's certainly not as stilted as some archaic KJV language could be and can be. But really the word reprove means to bring forth evidence, to convince somebody something is true or not true. And so just think it through for a moment with me. If you are watching, as so many people do, a courtroom drama, and that courtroom drama has a depiction of a defense attorney trying to defend his client, what do you think the episode's popularity would be if that defense attorney stood up and simply said, "Your Honor, my client is innocent. Thank you," and then sits down? The judge and jury would no doubt be wondering, where's the proof of that? Where is the evidence that he is innocent or she is innocent? That's not as far-fetched to think about Hollywood doing some type of episode where that's some strange strategy that might just work. But it is stranger to think about that happening in a real courtroom. Can you fathom a prosecuting attorney saying, "This man definitely did it. Take my word for it"? Why is it that that's not allowed in a courtroom setting, but it seems to be allowed in the church? And I don't want you to think that I am trying to be difficult or trying to be mean. What I want you to know is this: we have to do our part in convincing people. We have to do our part in preventing people from believing something is true just because someone they trust says it. There are a lot of people that I trust in this life. I trust my doctors to give me good medical advice. I trust the person who cuts my hair to do a good job cutting my hair when I go and sit down in her chair. There are a lot of people that I trust that, no offense to them, I would not necessarily run to them and say, "Give me your opinion on the political climate that we're in right now," or "Give me your opinion on this particular subject," because ultimately their opinion may not really matter as much, and nor would they really come rushing to me and ask me, "Give me your opinion on the political climate that we're in." But when we talk about something that I can go to an absolute source of truth, could you imagine how simple life would be if there was an absolute source of truth with politics? That you could find a political Bible and just point to, yep, this article, this section, this subsection, there you go. Wow, okay, that settles it at least. We don't have that. And so it puts a lot of problems and a lot of difficulties in our lives as we navigate trying to talk about politics. And nor am I about to start talking about politics on this podcast. But why are so many people leaving the church? Could it be that a part of it, not all, but a portion of it, are people who have sat in a congregation their whole lives and heard week in and week out, this is true, this is not true, but no evidence has been brought forth to prove it? Is that possible? We must do our job in convincing people of what is true and what is not true. And so next week, I'll detail the define and defeat experience and what it will look like, what the goal is, as was defined when I was a student. And I'll even talk about how some of it might have morphed and changed over the years, because this assignment is ever changing. A lot of the people on the network will be disappointed to know you can now do this assignment digitally. We all had to buy binders when we were in school, and so now, as we often hear graduates of the school say, it was harder when I went through the Memphis School of Preaching. But next week we'll be back, and we'll be talking about the define and defeat process, what we're looking to accomplish over the next several episodes. And then after all of that is done, we will have our series finale of the Far Better podcast. Until then, let's not forget to please God now, so our eternity can be far better.